Well, hello and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to be preserving strawberries all day long. I have 3 boxes of strawberries. They're organic strawberries that we picked up at a local. It's basically like a scratch and dent for fruit. And I believe these were $1.99 a box, which for organic strawberries is ridiculously cheap. And you do have to pick a couple out. I think I picked maybe 4 or 5 out of each box that were no good anymore. But for that price, I don't mind at all. And we didn't really get enough strawberries in our garden this year for me to be able to can them. So I was pretty excited to find these. The first step I'm going to do today is to hull the strawberries and cut them in half to get them ready for all of our recipes. And for today, we're going to be doing 2 different recipes for canning. I'm going to get both of them out of the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, and I'll link that down below for you. It's available on Amazon. I think Tractor Supply has it, probably any bookstore. But the first recipe that we're going to do is Rhuberry Spreadable Fruit. And that one is on page 27. And I love this recipe because it doesn't use any refined sugars. It doesn't even use pectin, actually. The pectin is just these tart apples. So that saves a lot of money too, because pectin's kind of expensive. But for this recipe, we are going to need tart apples. We're going to need our whole strawberries, some finely chopped rhubarb, and it's going to be sweetened only with frozen unsweetened apple juice concentrate. So I'm going to get my strawberries and my apples into the pot, and then I'm going to chop up the rhubarb. We got this right out of our garden. You saw my little helper picking that for me a little bit earlier. I actually moved my rhubarb this year, and I didn't think that I was going to get enough to do anything with. But the rhubarb that I moved was pretty stunted, and I didn't pick anything off of that because I wanted to do well next year. But the spot that we dug it out of, we must not have gotten all the roots, and it actually came back there. And that rhubarb was beautiful, as you can see in the video. We got tons of rhubarb there. So I don't actually want the rhubarb to be there. So we're going to have to probably move it again. I'm going to have to find some people who want some rhubarb because I don't have room to move it to the other spot. But the good news is that I get to actually make things with the rhubarb, which is wonderful. So we're going to be making this today and getting to use some of that rhubarb up. And it always feels good to get to preserve and use things that you grew in your own yard, so that's a plus. All right, so now we're going to put in the frozen apple juice. You were actually supposed to let this thaw, and I didn't get it out in time, so it's still a little bit frozen, but that's okay. It'll thaw here in the pot. And that's it. Those are all of the ingredients. This one was super easy, and I will definitely be making this next year. I have it marked in my book as one of our new favorites. All right, we're going to get this over to the stove. This actually needs to cook down for about 50 minutes, so I wanted to get this one going right away. And then while that's starting to warm up, I'm going to start prepping my canner because it's probably going to take a good long time for the canner to come up to temp too. So I want to make sure that I get that going. All of my recipes today are using half-pint jars. That seems to be the jar of choice for preserves that don't use refined sugars because they don't last as long when you open them. So you want to have a smaller jar anyway, just so that when you open it and it's in the refrigerator, it doesn't go bad. I'm going to periodically stir and mash this fruit as it's cooking down. All right, while that is cooking, I'm going to get started on our next recipe. And the next recipe we're going to make is Maple Strawberry Smooch, which is also in the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. And this one's on page 181. And they call for the strawberries to be pureed for this recipe. So I'm just going to do that here in my food processor. And I'm going to work in batches so that I can get it all in here and pureed down. Now I'm going to measure out the puree into my pot. This has such a beautiful color. I absolutely love it. And I have behind here, if you didn't notice, all of my peach preserves. I was filming the strawberry preservation video like the day after I was working on the peach preserve video, and I hadn't gotten them all de-ringed and wiped down yet. So they're all still sitting there, and they're just such a beautiful backdrop. All right, we're going to put in our lemon juice. And this recipe really doesn't have a lot of ingredients, which is kind of nice because it's nice and simple, and I had everything on hand. Unsweetened apple juice. And then this one is sweetened with maple syrup. So again, no refined sweeteners, which is wonderful. That makes my mama heart happy. My kids love fruit preserves. We use them all winter long on oatmeal, especially on oatmeal, but also on yogurt. And they love to stir it into the yogurt and into the oatmeal, and they eat a lot of it. So it's nice that it doesn't have a lot of refined sugars in, and it's just mostly fruit. Now I had extra puree, so I'm going to just put this in a container and put it in the freezer for now. That way I can use it in the future for something else. Maybe for baking with, or for making a sauce for ice cream. Who knows? We'll see. And I want to make sure I write on the top what it is and the date, because of course I will not remember. That's a very important step. All right, this Rhuberry Spreadable Fruit is looking perfect. So I'm going to get ready to start canning this. But first I want to get the foam off the top, and my kids will thoroughly enjoy this, so it is not going to go to waste. They love when I can any kind of fruit like this and they get to eat the foam. It's like a special treat for them. All right, so we're just going to ladle this into the jar, fill it up to a 1/4 inch headspace. And then we'll debubble it. And check the headspace again. And then wipe it down and seal it up. I keep seeing this really cool funnel on Amazon that shows you the headspace on the side so that you know for sure that you measured right and don't have to keep adding more in. Have any of you ever tried that? Does it really work? I'd be interested to know. Because with these dark funnels, it's so hard to see what you're doing, and it's always a guessing game. All right, so we're just going to keep following this whole process until we get through all of the Rhuberry jam. Once we have the canner filled up, we are going to place the rack back down into the canner and cover it up and process it for the proper amount of time. Now I do have a little bit of fruit left over, so I'm just going to put that in a spare jar here, and we will put that in the refrigerator and enjoy it in the next couple days. Once this is processed for the proper amount of time, we're going to turn off the heat, uncover it, and move it to the back of the stove for 5 minutes to let it start cooling down before we place it on the counter. Now I'm going to get back to my maple strawberry smooch, and I made a critical error here, as you will see. I put it in a pot that was way too small and then turned around for 1 moment to look at my book to read the directions, and this happened. So real life canning here, real life kitchen. This is not a perfect kitchen. I make mistakes all the time. So I needed to get that cleaned up, and I washed the big pot that we used for the other recipe and just transferred it over. It was a really big mess. That was not fun cleaning up. All right, my cans from my first recipe are done. I accidentally knocked one over as I was pulling the rack up, so it made it a little bit difficult to get these jars out. that's okay, we made it work. And you want to make sure that you place these somewhere where they can sit undisturbed for a good 24 hours. So I'm just putting mine here in the corner of the counter, and they're so pretty. I absolutely love having fresh canned fruits and vegetables. It's a nice feeling. All right, I am adding the pectin to my strawberry maple smooch, and that's the last ingredient. And we're just going to jar this up in the same process we used before. Filling the jars to 1/4 inch headspace, debubbling it, wiping off the rim with a vinegar soaked rag, and then sealing it up. Once you get the hang of it, it's super easy to just keep batch cooking and canning and doing it over and over again, like second nature. And we'll lower the rack back down into the canner and process for the proper amount of time. I like to lay something out on the counter just so I don't put the jars directly on the countertop because they are really hot. All right, well, that is all for us today. I'd love to hear what's coming in from your gardens and what you're processing in your kitchens right now. Be sure to leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.